look at that. You've never done that before, have you? So she was all excited, like, this is nothing to be excited about.
No.
It's like
All day misery.
You're talking about 3 cars that don't have air on. It's gonna be blistering hot.
When they won't let you leave.
Oh, and just hog tied to the table till you finally say.
Do we have enough? But
I don't know if we have corn.
Let's see, does it got?
How many do we eat?
Yeah, we got.
Just 8, I think. 3 more minutes.
I think we're right ahead. Trust me, we're in the middle of painting the inside and outside of our house a little bit. It's like my living room, or my dining room, and my living room, my bedroom, and my dining room. My dining room's done. I can't move my stuff out of my bedroom if I get that out.
Yeah, it's just all fun and games. Yeah, so I've been, and I go in tomorrow in the kitchen. So I went in my office at 4:30 this morning to get all my online stuff fixed, and I did it. I have to do a few things yet tonight. And then I was in the brewery at 10. I'll open 10 to like 1:30.
All right.
So I'm gonna be
Yep. The May 28th meeting of the City of Minot Planning Commission is now in order. Please call the roll.
Barch. Barnett.
here.
Bauman. Bollinger. Demacus.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Hochhalter.
Yes.
Keller. Coop.
Here.
Larshus.
here.
Offerdahl. Siebertson.
Here.
Wagonast.
Yes.
Okay, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to take just a brief moment to welcome Ms. Kelly Barnett, new member to the Planning Commission. Welcome, Kelly. Yep. And with that, I'll look to the commissioners for a motion to approve the minutes of the April 29th meeting.
Move to approve.
Second.
That's a motion by Demacus and a second by Coop. Please call the roll.
Larshus. Yes. Offerdahl. Siebertson.
Yes.
Wagonast.
Yes.
Barnett.
Here.
Demacus.
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Hochhalter.
Yes.
Keller. And Coop.
Yes.
Motion carries. And that will bring us to our first agenda item of the evening, which is a request by Southwest Crossing Partners LLC for a PUD, which is a planned unit development submittal subdivision, and to request an amendment to the future land use map from low-density residential and medium-density residential to high-density residential, and also a zone change from zones R4, R3, R3C, and R2 to RH. This item was carried over from last month's meeting, and the property is located at 4101 through 4231 and 4200 through 4238 Crossing Street Southwest and adjacent lots. And if I could have city staff's recommendations, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Brian Billingsley. I'm the Community and Economic Development Director for the City of Minot. As you'll recall, this application is for a planned unit development, a PUD. A PUD is a tract of land which is developed as a single unit under a single or unified ownership or control, and which generally includes 2 or more principal buildings or uses, but which may consist of one building containing a combination of principal and supportive uses. In this situation, the applicant is proposing to build 4 different buildings on one parcel of land. Planned unit development may be requested in any zoning district in the City of Minot under the provisions set forth in this chapter. Uses not otherwise allowed in this zoning district are prohibited within a planned unit development unless specific provisions are made and listed in the development plan or modified in the conditions of approval. Because a PUD allows for deviations from specific requirements of the zoning ordinance, the application and the approval process is more stringent than, as an example, an application for a zone change where concept plans are satisfactory. The Planning Commission and City Council must approve a detailed development plan that establishes the PUD and its specific deviations from the typical requirements of the zoning code. Once the detailed development plan is approved, the city and the applicant will enter into a written agreement related to the project. After our last Planning Commission meeting, planning and engineering staff reviewed the application and applicable ordinances and formulated a list of 10 items that the applicant needed to complete in order to comply with the requirements of the ordinance. Lance Lang, the principal planner, sent an email to the applicant on the 2nd of May asking for the items needed to complete the application. He gave the applicant 2 weeks to submit the recommended changes, and those changes can be found in pages 4 through 6 of our staff report. Staff received the applicant's response on the 17th of May, one day after the self-imposed deadline. Staff went through that application with a fine-tooth comb and reviewed all the details. And we have determined that the applicant has appropriately addressed the following items. Number one, the applicant has reconfigured the parking spaces in the parking lot and has met the minimum requirement for parking. They've met the stormwater requirements. The site plan properly indicates the zoning on the site is proposed for RH. They've corrected the building heights on most of the buildings on the application. On their application, some of the building heights were listed as 3 stories, others were 4 stories. For the most part, they made those corrections. And then they have also designated the walking path corridor on the site plan that was recommended by the Park District. However, that corridor on the plan, it doesn't show that it extends to the east property line. That's something that will need to get cleaned up. But while we reviewed the site plan and the application, we also noticed that the applicant did not appropriately address the following items. As of close of business today, the applicant has not filed the comprehensive plan map amendment application with the Community Development Department and has not paid the fee. We received an email from the applicant about a week ago stating that they've mailed the fee to us. We have not received it. We contacted the Finance Department this afternoon, and they could not find the check for that fee as well. The fee is for $1,225, and we always require that the applicant pay the fee before a hearing. Number two, a conceptual landscaping plan was not submitted. We requested the applicant to submit a landscaping plan. They did provide us with a site plan where they wrote the word landscaping on the site plan, where I presume where they're going to locate landscaping, but that was not enough to meet our requirements. Commissioner Baumann, if you recall at the last meeting, specifically requested depictions of landscaping renderings during the winter months, and they have not done that either. Another deficiency we found was that the application does not indicate the land use, zoning, and ownership of adjoining parcels of land. The street legend on the application is also inaccurate. The applicant was asked to submit front and side elevations for all 4 buildings and garages. Their latest submittal still only had the front and side elevation for 1 building. If you recall, that was the assisted living facility. They did submit elevations for the parking garages, but we still do not have front and side elevations for the other 3 buildings within the PUD. At the previous hearing, the applicant promised to remove the twin homes from the site plan, and they did that. But if you read the narrative, it still states that the twin homes will be built in the 2nd phase, and that needs to be removed from the narrative. And the last thing is staff asked the applicant to fix discrepancies in the application regarding building heights, which I addressed earlier. And we still found one section where they're planning on building 4-story buildings. However, in the site plan, they relabeled it to state that they're building 3-story buildings. So there's a few discrepancies that still need to be cleaned up with the application, and a couple of major items that need to be submitted in terms of the check that's going to cover the comprehensive plan map amendment fee, the landscaping plan, and the building elevations. Staff contacted the applicant last week and informed him that we'd like to continue this matter to the June Planning Commission meeting to give them enough time to complete the application. The applicant stated that they wanted the application to be brought to the Planning Commission for a vote. Staff spent a great deal of time last week working on this lengthy staff report that you have before you today. We submitted the report to the applicant and the Planning Commission on Friday afternoon. Staff wants to see this project become successful and pushing this project through with several incomplete items endangers the viability of the project and could lead to numerous delays and resubmittals to the Planning Commission and the City Council. Pushing it through prematurely also establishes a dangerous precedence for future PUDs. So staff recommends that a motion be made to hold this project until such time all the inaccuracies have been properly addressed, the application is complete, and the comprehensive plan map amendment fee has been paid. So with that, I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Billingsley. Commissioners, any questions at this time for Mr. Billingsley? Okay, thank you. And at this time, I will open up the public hearing and ask that anybody in attendance that is in favor of this agenda item, but please come forward at this time.
Hi, I'm Mark Black. I was with you guys a month ago. Well, I appreciate the accounting of the discrepancies and deficiencies. It isn't so clear as it was given here in the narrative that we received. It's a lot clearer to us what you're wanting. And the frustration, I have a little frustration here, and it's probably natural to have a little frustration through this process, right? But we could all work together and get it figured out. The frustration is that it seems like it's been kind of a moving target. We had a hearing last month, and it was never brought up that there was another fee due or difference in the application that needed to happen. In fact, we were told in the last meeting that everything was submitted, that the design team, the planner and his team needed to get together. There's a lot to digest. It's a big project, and get all on the same page. And yet, what transpired then is we received an email informing us that the development team got together, the staff got together to discuss the CCR project, and their goal was to discuss all pertinent items and develop a list of additional information to request from us. And this is since our last attempt at a hearing. And we thought we had everything pretty well lined up on the first hearing, but then there was a list that we tried our best to comply to. We did add some notes regarding landscaping, but of course there's no opportunity. I mean, there was really no way for us to get a landscape plan done. And I don't know that it would really make a huge difference on whether the project's approved. The PUD checklist says that there needs to be elevation of a typical building, which we've done, we've complied to. If you've seen one, you've seen them all. They're basically the same architectural design, same look. I don't know how that is going to help to develop more. And for us to come up with elevations on the other buildings, we've always stated from the very beginning that we don't have plans completed on the other buildings. We're asking for them to be approved and so that they can be submitted at a later date as far as the independent living and the skilled nursing facility. And that didn't seem to be a problem until after the last hearing. In fact, we have, even in emails, we had two DRT meetings prior to the last hearing in order to understand what we needed to do and what we needed to submit. And we thought we had a good handle on that. Probably didn't have a good enough understanding, but it has been changing. For example, they asked for the Mylars to be submitted in this last go-around, and we can't really submit Mylars until we have an approved site plan. And I called engineering and verified that with them. So I guess the main items were the map amendment, which I think we did, and I know we sent a check. I'm not sure why it hasn't arrived. I guess it was sent snail mail. I could cut a check as far as that goes. I mean, I have checks with me. But then a conceptual landscape plan. We did add notes on the plans indicating the tree spacing would be on the streets would be in compliance, and we tried to add more detail. We submitted pictures of projects, other projects that we've done, which we would replicate in as far as intensity, and indicated where the different specific features would be located on the new site plan. And that's all in the plans that you already have. And then the elevations, you know, I'm not sure how to address this, because at this point, for us to develop plans on additional buildings to the point where we can provide elevations is a tremendous investment when we still, you know, really don't even have a path forward with the project. I do, however, again, want to let you know that we're happy to accept conditions of the approval that would require us to have a landscape plan submitted that meets whatever criteria. I mean, we all pretty much know what that is. I think we'll far exceed the criteria that's being laid out for us in intensity and sizes of plants and hardscapes. You know, we will be happy to accept that, and then we have to have an approval on that landscape plan before we can apply for or receive permits. That's a really reasonable expectation. And then on the elevations, you know, what the PUD again asks for is an elevation of a typical building, and we've provided that. To try to provide more elevations is a tremendous cost that I don't know is really necessary at this stage if we've already indicated the architectural style of the buildings. Other than that, I think we're really, really close. I apologize if there's some discrepancies in detail. We'd be glad to clarify those or have those stipulated in a conditional approval if that's possible. But we'd like to see a way forward on the project so that we can invest the means. You know, I can expect everyone to put the money into this thing to get it done. I mean, to get the work done satisfactorily. I don't know if there's any questions or anything, but that's kind of where I'm at on the project.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Black. At this time, I will open up for questions of Mr. Black from the commissioners.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to hear from the director. Maybe you can comment on Mr. Black's
Certainly.
items.
The one thing that I found was in reviewing the plan unit development ordinance in Chapter 13 of the City Code, basically states all these materials have to be submitted in advance. It doesn't really give the director the authority to approve landscaping and other details after a PUD has been approved. They have to be submitted before the PUD is approved, and they have to be reviewed by the Planning Commission and by the City Council and approved by both bodies. So I do not have the authority to grant those kind of approvals through City Code, and therefore that's why I'm recommending the case be tabled to another meeting, so that way the applicant can submit these materials to us, and then we can move forward and make sure things are done properly. We've reviewed other plan unit developments, Mr. Black. We brought one with us this evening, and this developer went through everything that we're asking you to go through as well, and they've submitted all the proposed elevations, and everything was done according to, I guess this went back and forth between the City Council and Planning Commission a few times. If you, Northridge Villas, you probably recall this one, so. Yeah, so, you know, we're just asking you to do the same thing that other developers have done in the past.
Even on Northridge, though, they didn't submit elevations of every building. They did typical buildings, and the landscape is not a full-blown landscape plan. It's you know, some information on landscaping, and I don't think you've ever really asked for a full-blown landscape plan. So it's kind of it's kind of nebulous in a way how much detail we need to provide in landscaping. And we've provided enough, I think, that it gives a good indication of what we're trying to achieve. And that should be what the standard is, is that you guys need to understand what it is we're trying to do, and that's enough of a standard to be held to it if it's acceptable. That's the question.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I do have, I guess, one question, and I can certainly appreciate that with projects of this size and the magnitude of information that's required in a PUD, that at times things maybe change. I'm sure you can understand that too, where things, maybe staff even overlooks that they want later.
Yeah.
So an email was sent with pretty specific things, a list of 10 things. And I'm unaware, did you contact city staff with these concerns? Because we've already held for 1 month, to say, hey, I don't, what you're telling us today, we're,
Yeah, well, yeah,
we've.
I did.
So it kind of came in at the last minute, so you can see where that's been an issue for us.
Yeah.
I got to see this morning because I was
boy.
out of city
Yeah.
on Friday afternoon when they got this. So it put a little bit of a stress on us, and I understand these projects. We want to move the ball along if this is right, and, it's something the commission wants to do and give approval to, but it just seems to me like there would have been more of an effort on a very detailed and laid out, expectations regardless if they change it or not.
Well,
make sense?
I think we did a whole bunch of things more than what we had on the last hearing. We tried to do everything we could and put as much detail in it. Again, we're being asked to do elevations on buildings that haven't been designed,
I can appreciate that.
And so what the PUD checklist says is an elevation of a typical building, and we've provided that. I don't know I really don't know what is going to change or what difference it could make in evaluating the project to have more of the same elevations of other buildings. I mean, it's going to be the same architectural detail as we have on this building.
Okay. Staff, do you have any rebuttal to that?
Yeah,
or-
my only response is I just checked out the landscaping plan for this PUD, and it does go into some detail on the landscaping materials and species to be planted. So there's much more detail here in color and clarity than what I would find in the application before us this evening.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Black or city staff at this time? Okay, Mr. Black, if you stay and remain available in case something comes up, I appreciate it. Thank you
Thank
for your
you.
time. Yep. Okay, at this time, I'd ask for any people in attendance that would like to speak either for or opposed to this agenda item to come forward. And if you haven't done so when you come forward, please, is there,
Yeah.
there's a sign-in sheet there, and then just let us know who you are. We'd appreciate that.
Hello,
Hi.
I am Dawn Anderson. I'm the Executive Director at the Wellington Assisted Independent and Assisted Living here in Minot. A few of us are here this evening just to provide some information about what already exists in Minot and that there really isn't even a need for this project. So the information that I've come up with this since the last, I was actually here for the meeting in April, but hadn't had enough time to gather these things. So as far as assisted living is concerned, we already have 5 assisted living communities in Minot that create over 400 apartments available. In basic care, there's 93 beds over 3 different facilities in Minot. Skilled nursing, there's already 340 beds, more than 340 beds available. And none of us are at 100% occupancy. So there is availability all over, in all of those areas in Minot. We really don't see a need for additional apartments or beds, and in fact, there is a moratorium in place right now with the state of North Dakota for basic care and skilled nursing beds, and there's a requirement for those to be licensed prior to construction starting. In regard to the independent living apartments, When doing a search this morning for apartments in Minot, one engine showed 318 apartments available in Minot. So if, as far as the independent living population is concerned, there appears to be plenty of room for that. The need for assisted living, independent living, and basic care services has actually not increased because there's been an expansion of home-based and community services. We have a number of agencies available in Minot to provide services to the elderly right in their own home. And those include First Light Home Care, Pro Health Home Care, Visiting Angels, Caring Edge Home Health and Hospice, Trinity Home Health and Hospice, and Northland PACE, and there may be others. Another huge area of concern for us is staffing. Right now, we are all under the gun trying to keep our staffing levels at appropriate levels. With a 2.4% unemployment rate, my next employee is already working for somebody else. So we question the availability of workforce in Minot for a new facility like this. So I guess that's the basic information that we wanted to supply for all of you to make sure that you were aware of what's already available in Minot.
No, we thank you, and thank you for coming forward. And if you just hang on, if commissioners, any questions for Ms. Anderson?
Yeah, I have a quick question. Is that the moratorium you talked about in terms of the beds, is that through the Department of Health and Human Services, or was that a legislative?
I believe it's with the Department of Health.
Yes.
It is.
Who does the licensing, correct?
Okay, commissioners, any other questions? Okay, thank you for coming forward.
I'd just like to add to that I've been in assisted living. My name's Carmen McLaughlin, and I work for Edgewood for the last 21 years. And Edgewood has been in place for 26 years, the leader in assisted living in Minot. And at the time that we started with a 25-bed community, basic care, and we added on. In the 21 years, the first 5 to 10 years was standing list, waiting list, waiting to get in. We added memory care. We added the other assisted living communities. As of the last 5 years plus, most of our buildings have been maybe at a 90%. And it doesn't matter what promotionals we give out there, it's been 90% or lower. And as all of you know, is when you start going backwards, it's hard to keep afloat. And we just purchased actually memory care, a memory care community that was at 80%. And I do believe memory care communities is a necessity in this town. That's one area that I would say that I feel we are underutilized. So if there's ever thought process on that. Alzheimer's is underutilized in a lot of areas. So that's the only one area that we can say, and we are independent living. We've tried independent living in our assisted living. There is no buy-in. So I'm not sure where the feasibility study is coming at from the surrounding areas. And now we have, for us as a community that's been there for 26 years, we actually added on home health and hospice to our community to actually keep our residents in there because they were going out faster than we could bring them in. So that was our way to being creative to keep our business afloat. So I just really want you to think about those as you go forward with this because, as Don said earlier, it's not going to affect us as a community. I guess the old saying is if you can't beat them, join them. And I'd sure hate for all these communities that have worked their heart and soul for years to lose ground because we have a new, bigger, and better coming into the community. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it'd be appropriate, Mr. Black, if you'd like to comment on that.
Well, we did have a feasibility and market analysis done by a national company. I built my first nursing home in 1984, so I've been doing it a long time, and I've worked in over 15 states now. We have some local people that are very interested in this project going forward. And there is a moratorium, but if you understand the moratorium, and I'm sure they do, there's at least 4 ways to satisfy the moratorium and go forward. There's plenty of avenue to getting that done. And, I understand it's not a comfortable thought to have competition, come into the community, but it really is a good thing for the community. And it helps to raise the bar, and it necessitates investment of profits back into, facilities and to some degree to, to keep up and to compete in the marketplace. And it provides a higher level of amenities often, and the demographics, we're all getting older. I mean, I'm getting older. We're all getting older. And the demographics show that the needs are just going to continue to increase. And when legislatures, and this moratorium was not put in place by the health department independent of legislature, it was done through legislature. And when legislatures get involved in protecting the turf, so to speak, it always ends up creating a vacuum, and that's been my experience. This is not a CON state, so there's not a certificate of need state, but there is a moratorium, and there's avenues in which to satisfy that moratorium. Again, if there's any questions, if I can clarify anything, I'd be willing to.
Commissioners, any questions? Mr. Black? Okay, thank you. Keeping the public hearing open, if there's anyone else who'd like to come forward, either for or against this agenda item, please do so now.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
a point of clarification. I
Yep.
want to make sure we're clear. It's really not the commission's role to decide whether the project, our role is to decide whether it meets the PUD requirements and those things, not really about what the needs are in the community and those things. Is that correct? The role of the commission is to decide, right? Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. I just want to make sure we're all clear on that this commission isn't the deciding factor on whether this project, we have a role in deciding whether it meets the zoning ordinance and things, but not how many are needed and what types and that type of thing.
Yep. Thank you, Commissioner Wagnes. Okay, at this time, I'll close the public hearing, and I will bring it to the commissioners for a motion, please.
I'll make a motion to hold the project for another month and with hopes that we can clarify the last 10 items.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Can we get that motion restated to state that that we're going to continue the project until all the inaccuracies have been properly addressed, the application is complete, and the comprehensive plan map amendment fee has been paid? Once all those three items are taken care of, then staff will place this on the next available agenda, and it'll be posted on the city's website, posted here at City Hall with the date and time and location of that public hearing.
Commissioner Wagnes?
I'll amend my motion to that, yes.
Thank you.
That's fine. So it'll be a continuation rather than a hold.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion from Wagonist and a second from Lartius. Is there any further discussion? Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Barnett,
Yes.
Demacus,
Yes.
Yes.
Burkhalter,
Yes.
Coop,
Yes.
Lartius,
Yes.
Offerdahl,
Yes.
Severson,
Yes.
and Wagoness.
Yes.
Motion carries. That will bring us to our next agenda item, which is a request by Minot Park District, if I'm not getting ahead of myself here. Okay. An agreement has been made between the NDDOT and the Minot Park District to deed a strip of Highway 83 right-of-way to the Minot Park District in order to accommodate the new Magic City Discovery Center site. A right-of-way plat per NDDOT standards will create an outlot to describe the parcel being transferred. This property is located on the east side of Highway 83 or Broadway and approximately 400 feet north of Hampton Inn property. If I could get city staff's recommendations, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. This is kind of hard to describe exactly where this is, but I think you all know the big hill, North Hill, just north of the Hampton Inn as you're climbing up towards the pedestrian overpass, close to the airport, close to the ball fields and whatnot. The design team for the new Children's Museum was working on trying to site this facility on that hill, and we discovered that this is approximately where it is on the screen. you can see where there's some flatter areas where you can park, but then if you look at the topo here, the closer the pink lines are together, the steeper it is. So you can tell that it is very, very steep. And to locate this facility in that location, we discovered that the right-of-way is extra wide there for the state highway, 83 Broadway locally. So we were working with the Park District and city staff and the Department of Transportation to acquire a piece of that right-of-way that would accommodate the footprint of the building. So here you can see in that green hatch, it's kind of light, but you can see where it says proposed outlot 31. It's about 300 feet long and 75 feet wide, something like that. And then this is oriented differently with north to the right, but this is the actual right-of-way plat. It had to be prepared to the specifications of the North Dakota Department of Transportation, and the surveyor did that, and it's been submitted and reviewed by engineering. So findings of fact, we required some right-of-way, we met with the officials, and a right-of-way plat has been prepared that meets NDTOT standards and submitted. Staff recommends approval of this plat as presented. I'd be glad to answer any questions if you have any.
Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Lang on this agenda item? Okay, seeing none, I will open this up to a public portion of the hearing. For any of those in attendance that are in favor of this agenda item, please come forward now. Those in favor or opposed, please come forward now. Okay, seeing none, I will close the public hearing and bring it to the commissioners for a motion, please.
Motion to approve the plat as presented.
It's a motion by Demakis and a second by Coop. Is there any further discussion? Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Larches,
Yes.
Offerdahl,
Yes.
Severson,
Yes.
Wagoness.
Yes.
Barnett,
Yes.
Demacus,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Hochhalter,
Yes.
and Coop.
Motion carries. And that will bring us to our next agenda item, which is a request by GR Vending ND Dispensary 4 LLC. This is for a conditional use permit to accommodate a clinic, more specifically described as a medical marijuana dispensary. The property is located 2301 16th Street Southwest. If I could get city staff's recommendations, please.
Yes, sir. You may recall a few months ago, there was a request for the same use, medical marijuana dispensary at this very same location. This is a vicinity map. It shows the building over by the mall. There's a more of a close-up view. Basically, in order to get a dispensary license, an applicant has to meet all the state requirements and be approved by the state, as well as all local zoning regulations. So the group that was here earlier had not applied to the state yet. They decided to get their CUP first and then apply to the state. But apparently the state didn't approve them. So the CUP basically doesn't do them any good unless the state identifies them as a candidate. This group that's before us tonight, GR Vending, they chose to go to the state first and get what I would call a provisional approval, like based on completing the local zoning regulations. And so they're before us tonight asking for that CUP to be issued so that they can then go to the state and complete the entire process. So in your staff report, I asked them to describe or to provide justification for the conditional use permit request. There's several items in there that talk about the comp plan and public health and safety and effects on the neighborhood and all that kind of stuff. And they did a really complete job of answering those questions. Let's see here if there's anything else I have. So basically, it's the same thing that we talked about with the other applicant a couple months ago. The new applicant has applied to the state, and they have to get a CUP, and they submitted this application. The only two items that were in the last CUP request, and also in this one for recommendations, would be that the facility shall comply with all the applicable rules of, it should say local and state government, not federal government, because the federal government has a differing opinion. I thought that was changed, so that'd be local and state. And then second, this is just in case recreational marijuana might be approved in the future. I guess it has perhaps a chance since medical marijuana has, but this basically says that just because they can sell and dispense medical marijuana, that doesn't mean that they could just turn around and start doing the same with recreational marijuana. It would have to go through another approval process. So if you have any questions for me, I'd be glad to answer them.
Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Lang on this agenda item? Okay, seeing none, I will open up to the public for anyone in attendance who would like to come forward and speak in favor of this agenda item. Please come forward now. And if you would, please make sure to sign in if you haven't done so and let us know who you are.
My name is Tony Brewer. I represent GR Vending, and I am here basically to answer any questions that anyone with the council may have.
Okay, commissioners, any questions for the applicant?
Okay.
Any
So from a
questions?
GR Vending standpoint, we typically do our medical dispensaries this way, where we get approval from the state first. It really stops us from, as we saw with the first gentleman, putting plans together for something that we really don't have a license for. So we get approval from the state first and then move on this way. So as long as there's no questions, we can move forward.
Okay.
You do have facilities in North Dakota already in other locations, at least one?
We've been awarded 4 total, 4 of the 8 dispensary licenses in the state of North Dakota. We'll have one here in Minot, Devil's Lake, Dickinson, and Jamestown. And then we are also one of 2 licensed cultivators in the state of North Dakota. Our cultivation center is in Fargo. We currently cultivate 5,000 square feet and are currently building a 50,000 square foot facility for all indoor cultivation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Brewer.
Thank you.
Okay. Ask that anyone in attendance who would like to speak in favor or opposed to this agenda item to please come forward now. Okay. Seeing none, I'll close the public portion of the hearing and ask the commissioners for a motion.
Move to approve the staff recommendations and conditions.
I'll second that.
Yeah, I got a motion by Coop and a second by Sievertson. Is there any further discussion? Any further discussion? Okay, please call the roll.
Wagonest,
Yes.
Barnett,
Yes.
Demacus,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Hochhalter,
Yes.
Coop,
Yes.
Lartius,
Yes.
Offerdahl,
Yes.
and Severson.
Yes.
Motion carries. And that will bring us to our next agenda item, which is a request by O'Reilly Auto Enterprises LLC for a variance to the rear yard setback as required by the city code due to topographical and dimensional site constraints which restrict the development of the property. This property is located at 1205 North Broadway. If I could please get city staff's recommendations on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's a vicinity map here. You can see the location of the property. These slides are from 2015, so the building you see is not the O'Reilly's building. It's the existing building. There's a close-up of it with the note, not O'Reilly's. You can see it's a fairly small type site right on Broadway. And when we look at the zoning, it's zone C2, which is what most of Broadway frontage is, but the Catholic school behind it is actually zoned ag. And I thought that was kind of strange, but I guess I talked to some people that have been around Minot for a long time, and they said the school used to be way out in the boonies back in the day. And I guess it never got zoned anything else because schools are allowed in agricultural. But the issue with that is that in the middle of the design process, laying out the building on the site, the assumption was that the standard C2 setbacks would apply, which would be 0 for a rear yard and 0 for a side yard. And with the ag zoning adjacent, it requires a 25-foot yard. There's also some topo on this site. As you know, you're climbing up the hill, so it makes the site a little bit less easy to, to accommodate development than otherwise. So this is a site plan that the design team put together. You can see the building is relatively tight to the rear yard, but if you were trying to push it out to the east to get the setback that's required, there's not enough room to keep all the parking and landscaping requirements and things that are the development standards that are required in C2. So here's kind of a close-up. It appears like it's the building's about 17, almost 18 feet off instead of the required 25. What the applicants requested actually is a 10-foot variance so that they can be 15 feet from the line, which they're actually going to be a little bit more than 15, kind of a safety factor, I guess. So findings of fact, the layout was done, and the setbacks can't be met with the way it was laid out. When staff reviewed the plans, we realized that there's a 25-foot setback. The site plan has a closer setback at this time, so they're requesting a 10-foot variance to the rear yard since they can't meet the 25-foot rear yard due to site topography and the size of the shallowness of the lot from east to west. And I did also ask for a justification statement from the applicant to explain why they were requesting a variance, and that's included in your packet. So staff recommends approval of 10-foot variance to the rear yard setback for this property due to the lot configuration and the site topography. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Lang. Commissioners, any questions of Principal Planner Lang?
No.
Okay. Seeing none, we'll open up the public portion of this hearing, and anyone in favor of this agenda item to come forward. Thank you. Make sure to sign in and let us know who you are.
My name is Rob McClellan. I'm representing O'Reilly today.
Yep.
I did want to clarify the setback on the backside there. The north corner of that building, the northwest corner, we're just a little bit more than 15 feet, so that's why we're asking specifically for that 10-foot variance. The southwest corner is like 17, but the northwest corner is about 15 feet off. But that'd be the only thing I have to clarify.
I apologize.
Oh, no,
saw the 17 and
I was looking at our plans, and I think we dimensioned the 17-foot, and I know that it's like a little bit more than 15 at that northwest, so a 10-foot would be exactly appropriate to what we need.
He's doing it. Commissioners, any questions for Mr. McLeod?
No.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McLeod. Anyone in attendance that would like to speak in favor or opposed to this agenda item, please come forward. Seeing none, I will close the public portion. Ask the commissioners for a motion, please.
Motion to approve based on staff recommendation. Hardship being lot configuration and site topography.
Second.
I got a motion by Wagner and a second by Demakis. Is there any further discussion? Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Hanson.
Yes.
Hochhalter.
Yes.
Coop.
Yes.
Larches.
Yes.
Offerdahl.
Yes.
Severson.
Yes.
Wagonast.
Yes.
Barnett.
Yes.
And Demakis.
Yep.
Motion carries. Our next agenda item is a request by Jarrett Schatz for a conditional use permit to add an additional above-ground propane tank at Schatz Crossroads. Property is located at 1712 20th Avenue Southeast. If I could get staff recommendations, please.
yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think everybody knows where Schatz Crossroads is, right on the highway. There's a convenience store, truck stop, and restaurant, and a lot of stuff going on. There's a vicinity map there. And towards the rear of the property, you see there's an existing propane tank there. That's a 30,000 gallon above ground storage tank. Basically the same thing as what they're requesting. They would have put a new one right next to this one. When this one went in, apparently there wasn't any requirement for a CUP at that time because it's been there for some years. You'll see the white arrows that says all lots under common ownership. I just noted that because there's some setbacks from property lines, but since they're under common ownership, the interior lines don't count, right? So it'd be like the perimeter property lines. There's the new tank would be located roughly north and next to and aligned with the existing tank. And the property setbacks, or I should say the setbacks from the property line and from any building have to be at least 75 feet. So you see the one at 78 is the closest, but it meets the setbacks. The fire department, the fire chief did review this and approve it. I don't have any problem with it. There's kind of a manufacturer's illustration of what it might look like. And the applicant did provide a lot of information based again on that section of the CUP that talks about public health and safety and the comp plan and does it affect the neighborhood and things like that. They're going to install new fencing with a locking gate. There'll be vehicle crash protection. It's located back on the lot away from the main patterns of circulation. You know, won't be available to the public. The only time the gate will be open is when they're actually filling or dispensing propane. And you can see this is the existing tank here on the screen, a few different views of it. And then this new one will go right in there next to it. So findings of fact, they'd like to locate a second tank to provide better customer service, same size as the existing. Does require conditional use permit now in this current code. They've applied for such. And so the recommendations here are that basically this is a license with the city for this applicant to be the permittee and operate at this location. It's non-transferable to another person. If there's a change in ownership that would come up, it would be cause for an amended or a new CUP, and a CUP can be revoked at any time if there's some issue, violation of the permit conditions. And then the last one is just kind of a liability thing that just because of this group and the council and staff have approved this and the fire department and everybody else, it doesn't mean that, you know, there'll be liability if there were anything to happen at the propane storage facility. So if you have any questions for me, I'd be glad to answer them.
Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Lang? Okay, seeing none, I will ask for those individuals in attendance who are in favor of this agenda item to come forward if you choose. Thank you. And again, me being repetitive, please sign in and let us know who you are.
Jarrett Schatz with Tryon Propane.
Okay.
I just basically came up if you guys have any questions for me. Hopefully I can help you answer them. If I can't, somebody will be available to answer any questions you guys might have.
Thank you, Mr. Schatz. Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Schatz? No questions? All right, thank you.
Thank
Something
you.
comes up, we might call you back up. Yep. Okay, anyone in attendance that would either in favor or opposed to this agenda item, please come forward at this time. Seeing none, I will close the public portion and ask the commissioners for a motion.
Move to approve staff recommendations, conditions.
Okay. Motion by Coop,
Second.
second by Offerdahl. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Severson,
Yes.
Wagonest,
Yes.
Barnett,
Yes.
Demacus,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Hochhalter,
Yes.
Coop,
Yes.
Lartius,
Yes.
Offerdahl.
Yes.
Motion carries. The next agenda item is a request by Jeff Ludke for a subdivision of a separate two separate existing buildings into two platted lots. The property is located at 300 and 304 18th Avenue Southeast. If I could get city staff's recommendations, please.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Here we see the vicinity map, the location of this property, a little bit back from Broadway on 18th Street. There are two existing buildings on this single parcel that are under common ownership, and for whatever reason, the owner wants to split it, so they're on their own lots. Perhaps he wants to sell one of them. I don't really know. But you can see the configuration there. And then this is kind of a subdivision plat over the aerial, so you can see how the lot lines are around the buildings. This is commercially zoned, and there's no changes or anything proposed other than just splitting the land up. Then here's the subdivision plat itself for Roosevelt Heights 3rd Edition. The applicant has the 2 buildings on one parcel, wants them to be on single lots, and so they submitted this subdivision. Pretty straightforward stuff. Staff recommends approval of the subdivision plat as presented. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lang. Commissioners, any questions on this item for city staff? No. Okay. Any of those in attendance that would like to speak in favor of this agenda item, to please come forward if you wish. Any of those in attendance in favor or opposed to this agenda item, please come forward now. Seeing none, I will close the public portion and ask the commissioners for a motion.
Move to approve.
Okay. Motion to approve by Demakis. Second by Hochholter. Is there any further discussion? Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Coop,
Yes.
Larches,
Yes.
Offerdahl,
Yes.
Severson,
Yes.
Wagonast,
Yes.
Barnett,
Yes.
Demakis,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Hochhalter,
Yes.
Motion carries. Our next agenda item is a request by Jeffrey and Hope. Oh, excuse me. Did I skip one? I knew I was going to do that, see? I called it. Backing up a little bit here. Hearing on request by Scott Bintz of Redheaded Rebel LLC for a conditional use permit in order to remodel the existing building into a climate-controlled storage as required in zoning ordinance section 11-4D. The property is located at 1908 Hiawatha Street Southeast. City staff's recommendations, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Here's the vicinity map, property located on Hiawatha. The only type of storage allowed in C2 is climate-controlled storage. It does require CUP. The other typical self-storage units are in industrial M1 primarily, or M1 or M2. They're not allowed in C2. So there's an existing building here, and this developer is going to retrofit this building to make it into climate-controlled storage. Here's basically the inside floor plan. So there'll be these units inside that will have your individual padlocks or whatever on there. There'll be an access key or access code to get into the main door of the facility, and then the interior climate will be controlled to heat and cool it. So documents or data, antiques, if you got great-grandma's baby grand piano, you don't have room for it, you don't want to just throw it in a regular storage shed, right? So this shows there's several different sizes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different sizes of units. They're kind of color-coded on here on this graphic, so you can see them. This is the existing building. It's kind of a plain Jane building. You can tell by looking down on the roof, too. There's a lot of stuff on the site that the owner said he's going to clean up and fix up. But this is the proposed building elevations. They aren't in color, but the dark stuff you see there that's been added is basically they're going with a red, I think they called it a Victory Red or something like that, trim around the roof line and down the sides, the corners, around the windows. They're adding windows in the entry doors. They're adding on the street-facing facade, they're adding the windows. And they're also adding a 4-foot tall brick face or face brick type of wainscoting with that red accent line above it. So they're actually doing quite a bit to, and there's kind of a comparison of what it was and what it will be. They have to do that by C2 standards for upgraded building materials and architectural motifs and whatnot. So they have met that section in the code. They've submitted a landscape plan, which is required for a CUP. The lightly shaded trees across the top of the map are not actually on their property, but there's a fiber optic lines. You see all those lines that are kind of running through there? There's a big easement and a bunch of fiber optic stuff in the place where they would plant. So they don't really have a lot of options. I guess it's good that there are trees there on the neighboring property. Hopefully they'll stay there. On the rear, on the right side, or I'm sorry, the left side of the slide, which would be the rear of the property, there's dark star-shaped trees. There's by the code, in order to buffer, there's 10 trees required there, and there's only 6 provided now, so they need to add 4 more in there. They have the street trees along the front and the bright lime green on the right side of the slide, and some shrubs shown like little asterisks, so that all meets the code. In the orange area at the front of the building, they are required to have at least a 4-foot wide foundation planting, and they don't have that, although they're aware of these things. So before they get a building permit to do this work, we would expect that the landscape plan will be revised accordingly. So findings of fact, the applicant wants to retrofit this building. Its own C2 requires a conditional use permit. They submitted a complete application. And by the way, they did also answer the questions about how it affects the neighborhood, how it conforms with public health, safety, and welfare, and all those things that are in the CUP chapter, and that was in your packet. So staff recommendation, we have, again, the kind of standard licensing information in the conditional use permit that the permittee is the applicant is the permittee and designated to operate this at this location, that if it changes in ownership, it could cause an amended or new CUP, could be revoked, and then the liability clause that the city's not liable for issuing the permit if anything were to happen at this facility. So if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer. Well, I think there's maybe more for this one. Hold on. Yep. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Just for the landscaping, and I don't know if this needs to go into the CUP conditions or not. I guess that's a question maybe for legal. But because they're required to submit a detailed landscape plan for the CUP, and they were missing, and some of the information and whatnot wasn't correct, I put in there the additional trees and the foundation plantings and that kind of thing. And to my knowledge, they're not planning on doing any outdoor storage. They are going to make some site improvements. They're going to get rid of the junk and reseed it and make it nice. They've added parking in front, or they will add parking in the front and a sidewalk. But I don't recall them ever talking about outdoor storage. But if they were to have anything out there, they would have to meet the outdoor storage requirements for C2 zoning. So if anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lang. Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Lang this time?
Do these conditions match the one in the final report you sent out that we're seeing here?
Oh, it's up here?
Yes.
Yes, the written staff report should match this, yes.
Yes, all right. I know it was sent under a separate document, so I just want to make sure. Thank you.
Okay, commissioners, any questions for Mr. Lang at this time? We'll open up the public portion for anyone in favor in attendance tonight like to come forward, please do. And as I always say, please sign in and let us know who you are.
Chairman Hansen, I'm Veronica Meyer with Interstate Engineering, here on behalf of the applicant Redheaded Rebel. Here to answer any questions anyone might have.
Thank you very much for coming forward. Commissioners, any questions for Ms. Meyer? Seeing none, thank you. If we do have something, we'll call you up. Okay, anyone in attendance that would like to speak in favor or opposed to this agenda item, please come forward now. Seeing none, I will close the public portion. I will ask the commissioners for a motion.
Motion to approve based on staff recommendation and conditions.
Okay. Motion by Wegenes, second by Hochhalter. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Barnett,
Yes.
Mackus,
Yes.
Hansen,
Yes.
Hochhalter,
Yes.
Hoop,
Yes.
Larches,
Yes.
Offerdahl,
Yes.
Stevenson,
Yes.
Wiggins.
Yes.
Motion carries. Right now I can go to this one?
Now you can go to that.
Okay, all right.
Last one.
This is a hearing on request by Jeffrey and Hope Buckwhite, so I apologize if I butchered that, for a 6-foot variance to the 25-foot front yard setback. Is that a 6-inch variance?
Yep.
6-inch variance, I apologize, to the 25-foot front yard setback, and a 5-foot variance to the 20-foot rear yard setback to allow the owner to construct a garage addition, approximately 30 by 30 garage addition in the front yard of the lot due to steep topography. The property is located at 414 and 416 7th Avenue Southeast, and I couldn't find it the other night, so it must be hidden, but if I could get city staff's recommendations, please.
That's a unique property, and this is the vicinity map. What's north to the top. You can see that 5th Street, as you travel south, kind of dead ends in the 7th, and then 7th doesn't really go anywhere. There's actually some of 7th Avenue, vacated 7th Avenue on this property. So here you see the house that exists, and the dog leg in the street there. To the top of the house, or to the north side where that existing deck is the front yard where the applicants would like to put a 30 by 30 garage addition. And this is a very steep site. Here you can see the whole backyard is basically a hill, and that has implications for drainage too, because all the water coming off of that hill from the surrounding properties and everything else kind of needs to continue going the way it's going. So if you were to build a garage anywhere back in there, even if you built it into the hill, there would be some technical issues and likely some drainage issues. So really the only place that it could fit on the property would be in the front yard. To be 30 by 30, it would have to be, would have to receive the variances that they requested. So here's a kind of a simple diagram that shows the lot and approximately where the garage would go. Then as you look from kind of the north property line back up towards into the hill and into the site, you can see the deck area there that is approximately where the garage would go. So it'd be, something maybe like this, I don't know. And then looking at it from this side here, it would look maybe something like this, just to give you an idea. There's some other views of the site from looking back down towards the street and then looking towards the back side of the deck there. This is a diagram that the owner drew up that shows the measurements. There would be it would be just a little bit too close on the east side, 24.60 feet. And it's supposed to be 25, right? So it's only a 6-inch variance on the east side, and in the back, there's a 20-foot rear yard required. So that would be where if it's only at 15, then they need some relief there as well to fit this in there. So findings of facts, they would like to construct a garage to park vehicles and store their possessions out of the weather. The steep hill really precludes the back area, along with the drainage patterns that it creates. They're the only suitable locations in the front. And they did provide some statements for justifying the variance based on topography and drainage in their submittal, and I included that in the staff report. So there's 2 variances, the 6-inch variance to the 25-foot front yard setback on the east and a 5-foot variance to the 20-foot rear yard setback on the west, so that they could build the garage in the front yard due to steep topography and site drainage concerns. So that's it. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Lang? No. Thank you. At this time, we'll open it up to the public. For anyone in favor of this agenda item, please come forward now. And as always, let us know who you are and sign in. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Thank you, Mr. Lang. Here to answer any questions that you folks may have. I think Mr. Lang did a good job of demonstrating the issues with the topography. About all at the back is suitable for us, perhaps terracing or something, but it makes a wonderful deer path. But
Wonderful. Thank you for coming forward, Commissioners. Any questions for the applicant? Seeing none? Okay, thank you. Anyone else in attendance is here either in favor or opposed to this agenda item? Please come forward at this time. Okay, seeing none, I will turn it over and ask for a motion from the Commissioners, please.
Motion to approve based on staff recommendations. Hardship being steep topography and site drainage.
Motion from Mignist.
Second.
I'm going to give it to Lartius on that one. So a second by Lartius. Is there any further discussion? Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Offerdahl,
Yes.
Severson,
Yes.
Wagonest,
Yes.
Barnett,
Yes.
Demacus,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Hochhalter. Coop,
Yes.
and Lartius.
Yes.
Motion carries. And that was our final item, so
No other business?
no other business. This meeting is adjourned.